What would you do to get your wife to start having regular sex with you again? I spent the last 8 years with my spouse who wants sex regularly, even more than I do. I'm not saying that to brag. That wouldn't be my reality now if it weren't for the previous 10 years of failed relationships where I lost connections and ended up sometimes having to beg for sex before I truly learned how attraction and desire worked. So if you're struggling in your marriage and your wife doesn't want to have sex with you, I'm going to show you what most men completely misunderstand about attraction and desire in relationships. Before your wife completely stops wanting sex, there is this transition period where intimacy is still a bit present, but it kind of loses its aliveness. The sex may not stop overnight, but there are these slow changes that happen that are often easy to attribute to basically life becoming a bit more stressful. It's easy to make excuses as to why the frequency is less and less. The usual: kids, work, schedules, regular ebbs and flows of daily life that lead her to saying she is tired at night. And to be fair, look, sometimes that is true. But if you are doing your job creating sexual polarity, she will want you regularly. But long before the sex stops for good, the aliveness disappearing is pretty noticeable if you know what to look for. The kisses get shorter and the playful touching disappears. Love should be playful, so if you stop flirting and holding hands with her, everything starts to feel more like being roommates or business partners running a household and just co-parenting if you have kids. That intimacy that she used to be more enthusiastic about and even initiated sex sometimes turns into her feeling indifferent, or quite frankly, she avoids having it. And if you do have sex once in a while, it feels like she's doing it out of obligation because the chemistry or spark in her is pretty lifeless. There's not much of a worse feeling than having sex with your woman, and it feels like it's just kind of like checking a box to her. I know if you're watching this video, chances are you have either lived this before or are living it right now, and you know the feeling I'm talking about. You can tell when someone is truly present and when they aren't. And it's incredibly painful when you're having sex with someone you love, but you sense he's just kind of mentally waiting for it to be over. As a man, as much as we want sex, we do also want that feeling of being chosen and desired by her. If she isn't initiating any intimacy with you anymore, and it isn't even, she's not talking about sex, it can feel like she's completely over it for good. It is your job as a man to be acting in a way that builds her attraction for you. And this is where we lose a lot of men who just don't want the responsibility and think it's all about bashing the man or I'm blaming the man. And I can't tell you that couldn't be further from the truth. For those who think that way, they will always be blaming somebody else because they refuse to understand what the true nature of attraction is. But for you, I hope you pay attention and take this seriously, because whether we like it or not, our actions as men are directly linked to her attraction level for you and desire for sex with you. When you hit that patch in your marriage where you have the same arguments and the same promises, if you're not acting as the leader, it starts to put more of the masculine responsibilities onto her shoulders. And when that cycle keeps happening, the sexual polarity goes with it. You have to have that polarity present to allow her feminine energy to grow in attraction and desire for you. She didn't just come to the conclusion that she doesn't want to have sex with you anymore. The slowly accumulated emotional experiences in your marriage where she felt unheard or emotionally alone is what starts to shift that leadership. Honestly, they can be the tiniest things, but if they accumulate enough over time, it's very easy for it to snowball. Attraction lives inside the emotional climate of the relationship. If that climate is unstable for a long period of time, there goes her desire as well. But if desire can erode through repeated emotional experiences, it can also be rebuilt through those repeated emotional experiences. And that's where you have far more influence than you realize, even though right now it feels like she wants nothing or very little to do with you sexually. When sex starts disappearing in your marriage, it's natural to try and do a variety of things you think is going to ignite the spark. You may buy her flowers or plan a nice date, which are nice things. Like, those are really nice things. But the issue is, it's not just those things that automatically reignite sexual desire for you and her. Maybe you take her out to dinner and she actually does feel in the mood, and that one night you do get lucky. Keep in mind, how into it is she actually? Or does she just kind of like feel bad for you? Which is back to the obligation I was talking about earlier. And if you notice her not really being into the sex and it feels like it's just an obligation to her, you then try to solve that by having a conversation with her and asking her questions like, what can I do better? Or how do we get back to where we used to be? When you start to directly chase that desire by putting her on the spot when obviously she knows the feeling is different and that spark is not there as much now, that direct chasing will cause it to slip away further. Case in point, I have told the story about my ex-fiance and how I thought taking her on a luxury vacation to Mexico would get that spark back for us when we were going through that rough time period, where basically I had no clue that the things I were doing were causing her to emotionally disconnect from me, even though she was crazy in love with me before. We had sex while on vacation, but I didn't feel like she was that connected to me. And I also just kept sensing distance from her that whole week, like emotionally, or there's just kind of this like aloof feeling I was getting from her. I genuinely believe that getting that time away on a nice vacation would fix the distance that was happening in our relationship. Sure enough, within the first day or two after we got back from that trip, she was breaking up with me. What I'm saying is that desire rarely responds well to pressure, and pressure doesn't have to be just saying like, we need to have more sex. It also adds pressure by asking her if she still loves you or why she doesn't want you anymore. You have the right to feel hurt or frustrated, and I've asked many of those things before as well, but turning it onto her and saying those kind of things will not help your cause. The real reason she can't just force desire or want to have sex with you is because along the way she has felt less and less safe with you emotionally. For whatever reason, there can be a bunch of them. And for your specific scenario, I would have to learn more about the relationship to pinpoint exactly what that is. And you can book a free strategy call with me by clicking the link in the description below. But no matter what the specific actions that cause the disconnection, ultimately it will come down to her not feeling safe and heard. I have clients in this situation ask me why their wife is not being intimate with them, or why is she treating it like a chore? And the answer is often always found after I ask a few questions about what has been happening in the relationship in terms of the dynamic. It always starts out as they believe their wife is being punitive against them or withholding sex. But when there has been this long period of time in their relationship dynamic where the emotional center has been placed in their wife, meaning he doesn't act like the leader at home and she basically determines what his mood and confidence is, that's where polarity and attraction start to dissipate. It's hard for her to relax into a connection filled with desire for you when the repeated evidence shows that they always have to be on guard for how your emotional state is. That should not be her job at all. Whether you think it's fair or not, that is your job as the man. You can feel very confident and masculine in every avenue outside your marriage or relationship, but when you're at home and you defer all the masculine energy to her because you're afraid of doing any further damage to the relationship or upsetting her, you're just letting her take the lead. Unfortunately, that is exactly what destroys that sexual polarity and pushes connection with you further away. I know that the burning question you have that you are really trying to figure out is, how do you get her to want you again? That hurt of feeling rejected or feeling lonely from having no more intimacy kind of becomes like this ghost in your relationship, and it feels very isolating and it's very real. I know if you think about your own situation, maybe you resorted to begging her to have sex with you, and maybe she actually did, but it wasn't as fulfilling as you thought it would be. I don't want you to feel bad if you did beg, but it's absolutely something you cannot do any further if you want to ignite that desire in her for you again. Even if it did work one time or two times and you think it might work again, it's incredibly unattractive and will only work against you long term. Instead, stop obsessing over the attraction and feeling hurt from her and start focusing on rebuilding connection and her trust through rebuilding yourself. The strongest position you can operate from is self-respect. When you focus on making yourself accountable, boundaried, purposeful, and really rebuild your confidence and self-respect as a man, that is what will cause her attraction to turn around. If you don't take the focus off her and her level of desire for you at this current time, you're going to spend way too much of your time and energy worrying about that instead of doing what really works to save your relationship and rekindle that sexual polarity. That is the absolute truth. If your wife has stopped wanting sex or still has it with you periodically, but it feels lifeless and almost like it's pity for you, it is revealing dynamics that may have been building quietly for a long time. To get that fire back in her again, you need to follow a path that is proven to rebuild her attraction for you. If you want to walk that path, go watch my free masterclass that's linked in the description and pinned comment below. You will learn the time collapse transformational path that gives you the ability to create that sexual polarity to attract her and reconnect sexually with her again. Don't waste any more time thinking flowers or being extra nice to her is going to get her all over you again. It won't work. So go watch that free masterclass today if you're serious. And if you're struggling to save your entire marriage and you're feeling like nothing is working, check out this next video right here on how to save your marriage if you're the only one trying.